Hey, FFT YouTubers, it's Chris Towers here for the Thursday night post-game Q&A stream extravaganza. I still don't know what we're calling this. I'm bad at intros, but I'm here for the next 30 to 45 minutes-ish. We'll see how many questions we get, how many likes you guys leave on the video may determine how long I'm taking your questions for. But as I'm here after the Ravens 27-22 win over the Buccaneers, and it was a weird game. The Buccaneers offense continues to look disjointed. The Ravens had pretty much everyone leave with injuries, or at least all the guys who were injured coming into the game. And it ended up being a pretty strange game. We'll go over that one first, but make sure you leave any of your questions in the chat. Make sure you like and subscribe to the video and the YouTube channel, Fantasy Football Today, so you can get notified whenever we go live. We got all kinds of streams. They're doing the podcast in the mornings. We got Q&A streams Thursday night, Thursday afternoon, Tuesday evening, Sunday morning, not Saturday morning. So a lot of opportunities for you to get your questions answered right here live. And let's talk about the Ravens-Buccaneers game while I'm waiting for some of your questions to come in. And look, Tom Brady, I mean, this was his third best fantasy performance of the season with 19.1 points in a 6-point per PPR or 6-point per pass touchdown league, which kind of tells you how mediocre he's been this season. He's 13th overall in fantasy scoring, lower than that in points per game. And I mean, this will help his point per game average, but it's still pretty bad. 325 yards on 44 attempts, 7.3-ish yards per attempt. That's fine, but it's not great, especially when he only had the one touchdown. That was late in, I would say quasi garbage time. I don't know. The announcers for this game were definitely making a lot of excuses for Brady, blaming it on, he needs time to get on the same page with Mike Evans, a guy that he's played with for 2.5 years, Chris Godwin, kind of similar stuff. Look, there are legitimate excuses here. Julio Jones, he's barely played with him. Cade Otton, he's a rookie. He dropped a two-point conversion at one point that I think got called back for a penalty. There are legitimate excuses for Tom Brady not playing well, but it's also worth acknowledging that he just is not playing well right now. Last week, he was overthrowing Mike Evans on a ton of deep balls. Mike Evans also dropped a would-be long touchdown last week. There's plenty of blame to go around when an offense with this much talent is struggling the way that the Buccaneers offense is. And the one thing that makes me hesitant to write Tom Brady off is that he looks like the 2019 version of himself. He's incredibly frustrated. He's not producing. And in that instance, you could look at it and say, well, he got to Tampa the next year and had one of the best seasons of his career and was equally good in 2021. So, clearly the weapons were an issue in 2019. But we're also talking about a 45-year-old who, doesn't have great athleticism. That's not a knock on him. He's in great shape for a 45-year-old quarterback, but he's still a 45-year-old quarterback. He's missing a lot of throws. You can see there are times when he is seemingly like going down in anticipation of the pass rush getting there before it actually does. My cat is trying to get on my desk to get some attention because I didn't let them out of my office. So, we might have, some cat sightings today. But yeah, I think the Buccaneers offense, there isn't much to be excited about or even optimistic about with this offense. I have faith that they'll turn it around because it's just, that's what my priors are strong with Tom Brady. He's been really good for literally most of my life. He's been one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. He's still got good weapons in Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and Leonard Fournette. I have faith he'll figure this out. But right now, things don't look good. And it's not just because Mike Evans missed a couple games and they've had some miscommunication. Tom Brady is not playing at a high level right now. On the other side of the ball, we had Mark Andrews leave with a shoulder injury. Rashad Bateman left with a foot injury. Rashad Bateman's foot injury, obviously a recurrence of the issue that's been bothering him over the past couple of weeks. John Harbaugh did say after the game that Rashad Bateman tweaked his previous foot injury. Mark Andrews' shoulder injury, not serious, neither considered to be a major injury or setback. That's according to Ryan Mink, editorial director for Ravens official website. So that's good news. Hopefully these aren't long-term issues. The Ravens have a mini bye week before their week 9 matchup against the Saints, and then they have their actual bye in week 10. So I think even looking at it, worst case scenario, maybe there's a 1 week absence that we're at risk of, but even that seems pretty unlikely for these guys. So that's the good news. Gus Edwards left with a hamstring tweak late in the game. Hopefully that's not serious, but this is always the concern with guys. You see it in training camp a lot. There are many more hamstring injuries in training camp than any other point in the season. In the first couple of weeks of the season, that remains true. And so when you have a guy like Gus Edwards coming back from a serious injury in the middle of the season, that's always a risk. We saw with J.K. Dobbins, not the hamstring, but, a setback. So there's some concern there. And, I think what we saw from Gus Edwards today, he ran the ball pretty effectively, 11 carries, 65 yards, but no touchdowns, no targets. That's going to happen. Even if he had stayed in the game, maybe he doesn't score a touchdown, maybe he does. But this is, I think he's a low-end RB2 when he's healthy. So the big thing coming out of this game, really, Isaiah Likely looked awesome. 6 catches, 77 yards, and a touchdown on 7 targets. He was, I think clearly Lamar Jackson's favorite target once Mark Andrews went out of the game. If you look at the 2 tight ends, 12 targets, 9 catches, 110 yards between them. Obviously, Isaiah Likely is not as good as Mark Andrews, but he looks pretty damn good. What he did in the preseason, what he did in this game. If Mark Andrews does have to miss week 9, I think Isaiah Likely is probably going to be ranked as a top 5 tight end for me, and possibly, top 3. It might be just Dallas Goedert and Travis Kelce ranked ahead of him, just because the role for the tight ends is really valuable in this offense. Mark Andrews loves throwing to them. That's a big part of their offense. And Isaiah Likely looks really good. So I'm excited about the potential for him. I've got him in a couple of dynasty leagues. Very happy about that. The long-term arrow really pointing up in his first real opportunity to be a star. So, if Mark Andrews is out next week, I think Isaiah Likely could be in for a big game. And I think that's it for the Thursday night recap. We'll have more on the full episode of Fantasy Football Today, tomorrow morning, but let's get to some of your questions. Make sure you leave your questions in the comments. Make sure you hit that like button. Looks like this. You can't miss it. Looks like a little thumbs up. And let's go. Would I trade Ramondre Stevenson and Michael Pittman for Cooper Kupp? Yes, I would. I think Ramondre Stevenson could just be a top 12 running back the rest of the way. But Michael Pittman, I have some real concerns about him with Sam Ehlinger taking over at quarterback. I just don't think he's going to be particularly good. I think they're going to get back to establishing the run. And so I think there's a chance that Michael Pittman is just like a frustrating wide receiver too the rest of the way. Cooper Kupp is arguably the best player in fantasy at this point, based on what he's done since the start of last season. He is my number 1 ranked player pretty much every week. So yeah, I think that's fine. Assuming if you're starting Kenyon Drake because I guess someone later on this week in the similar range, you maybe don't want to do it. But as long as you've got a viable alternative to Ramondre Stevenson in your lineup, yeah, I think this is very much worth it. 10-team half PPR. Should we be rostering Kenyon Drake or Isaiah Likely at this point? I think you probably it's going to depend on Mark Andrews and whether it sounds like he's going to play in week 9. I think I would rather roster Isaiah Likely just because there's so little upside at tight end and he has some. And look, maybe we'll see him, have an expanded role moving forward after this game, because this is a team that really needs wide receiver help. I was talking about this on Twitter today, but it's so weird that this team traded Marquise Brown, didn't bring any wide receivers in really. I mean, Demarcus Robinson doesn't really count, but they didn't really add anyone of note. And then Rashad Bateman, even when he was healthy, was playing like 65% of the snaps. So they clearly need some help in the receiving game. Isaiah Likely provided a big spark this week. I would love to see him more involved moving forward. And I think there's a chance that happens. So I think there's more upside relative to the position with him. But obviously, if Gus Edwards is going to miss some serious time, then that, probably flips things back towards Kenyon Drake. So, we'll see the coming days and into next week. Great to trade Dalvin Cook and Michael Pittman for Travis Kelce. Needed a wide receiver. Depth is Mooney, DJ Moore, and Jerry Jeudy. Okay, so yeah, you do need someone. So you got Dalvin Cook and Michael Pittman for Travis Kelce. I think that's fine. I have my concerns about Michael Pittman, as I said with the previous trade. I think this is it's like a C. I don't think it's a huge win. I don't think it's a loss. I think it's a pretty good trade. Cook, I would rather have Kelsey than Cook, but Pittman helps make up that gap for sure. Sit one in full PPR: Jonathan Taylor, Travis Etienne, Kenneth Walker III, or Damian Pierce. That is a really, really tough decision. I have all four of those guys as top 18 players. I do have Damian Pierce, however, as the lowest ranked of that group. I think the Colts are going to get back to, part of what Frank Reich said when they made the decision to bench Matt Ryan was, we haven't held up our end of the bargain when we brought Matt Ryan in. We told him he was going to have an elite running game to help him, and we haven't. So, my read on that is let's get back to doing what we do well, and that's getting the ball in Jonathan Taylor's hands 25 times a game. I think he's, still arguably the best running back in fantasy moving forward. Travis Etienne, the passing game work is really valuable. The fact that he's going to play 80% of the snaps. And I think Kenneth Walker and Damian Pierce have basically the same role. Kenneth Walker's just a much more explosive player. So it's not really a knock on Damian Pierce. I just like these three guys more than him. Need advice: Courtland Sutton or Brandon Cooks this week? I have Brandon Cooks one spot higher than Courtland Sutton. Both are shaky in my mind as well. So I agree with you there. Don't feel good about any of them or either of those guys, but I would give Brandon Cooks a chance. Nico Collins dealing with a groin injury, has not practiced this week. So hopefully the Texans will get back to feeding Brandon Cooks a ton of targets. He had 22 targets in the first 2 games of the season. He has 25 in 4 games since. I don't understand that. That offense isn't good. They're not throwing the ball to Brandon Cooks. He's their best player by far. So hopefully, the trade deadline's coming up. Maybe we'll see Brandon Cooks get featured. I would start him over Courtland Sutton. All right. Got Fournette, picked up Rachaad White. Good move or clear bench space? I think it's fine to hang on to Rachaad White. Your bench should be about, sorting through high upside guys who have the chance to be, number one running backs if they get an injury. And I think Rachaad White is clearly that. They've shown that they're starting to trust him in the passing game. He had as many targets as Leonard Fournette. That's been happening more and more lately. I'm not sure he's going to be a 10 carry guy per game if anything happens to Leonard Fournette, but he's a fine guy to have around. Patrick Mahomes on a bye. Who should I start at QB? Jacoby Brissett, Andy Dalton, or Danny Dimes? I think I might be too low on Danny Dimes this week because I've got him as a quarterback 21. That is higher than Jacoby Brissett, but it's a little lower than Andy Dalton, and that just doesn't feel great. Because my read on the Saints' decision to keep Andy Dalton as the starter, they said, Jameis Winston's healthy. This is about what we think is best for our offense. Well, if you look at the numbers, Andy Dalton's average intended air yards per target is about 3 yards lower than Jameis Winston's. Obviously, last week aside, you would think he takes care of the ball a little more. And so that tells me that they want to go with a more conservative game plan on offense, try to control the ball, try to limit possessions. And, that makes me think that Andy Dalton doesn't have much upside. So I think I'm going to make the move to put Daniel Jones ahead of Andy Dalton. And that's where I'll go. I have Brady and Dak. Should I offer A.J. Brown for Lamar Jackson or lesser wide receiver for Kyler Murray, or stick with Brady and Dak? I think you just stick with those guys. I get it. I get being frustrated with what you're getting from Tom Brady. Obviously, Dak Prescott wasn't great last week either, but I think you've got, certainly 2 guys with top 12 potential, and the rest of the season, I would still probably rank Brady and Dak as top 12 options. I will say, I think I probably prefer Dak at this point rest of season. I think he's going to be better than he was last week. That was a very run-heavy game script. Cowboys have been very run-heavy so far this season, actually. I was looking it up. Their pass rate over expected stat, which basically just tells you, based on down and distance and score and all that stuff, how likely is any given play to be a run or a pass relative to the rest of the league. Cowboys have not thrown the ball more than you would expect at any point this season. Every single game, they've been more run heavy than you would expect. So I think that'll change moving forward with Dak Prescott getting healthy, but it's not necessarily the 600 pass attempt team that we thought it was. But that being said, I don't think you want to trade A.J. Brown for Lamar Jackson. 10-team PPR league, Brady, Etienne, Sanders. Okay. Traded Stevenson and Brian Robinson for A.J. Brown and Tua Tagovailoa. Thoughts? I think it's fine. I think A.J. Brown's probably the best player in the deal, but him and Ramondre Stevenson, I think it'll be pretty close. And then Tua for Brian Robinson. Brian Robinson is the kind of guy who I would just be trying to trade for anything of value right now. It's not that I don't think he can be good. I just don't think there's very much upside. He is not a player that I think you're going to regret trading. He's not going to catch many passes. He's got competition for goal line touches, even though, I think he'll be the primary short yardage back. But like we saw last week, they'll throw to Antonio Gibson out of the backfield. They'll probably have J.D. McKissick in there occasionally. So I just think Brian Robinson is like, you're going to get 60 to 80 yards from him. And then if you get a touchdown, is going to determine whether he's wide receiver or running back 34 or running back 17. And I don't think there's really, much variance there either way. Maybe he breaks a long play, but he's not a super fast guy. So I think Brian Robinson is just a low end. I don't even think RB2. I think he's an RB3 moving forward. So Tua Tagovailoa for Brian Robinson, perfectly fine with that. Dalvin Cook and Chase Claypool for T. Higgins. I don't think I would do that trade. Cook for Higgins is pretty close, and Claypool is fringy enough that it doesn't matter really if you trade him. But, there is the potential that he gets traded and finds himself in a better situation. And so I think I would not do Dalvin Cook and Chase Claypool for T. Higgins if I'm the one giving up Cook. So frustrating for Godwin. They stopped targeting him after a great quarter. All 3 deflected passes were Godwin targets. 1 bounce pass from Brady. Fournette jumps early on a Godwin walk-in touchdown. Yeah, that was frustrating. I still think Godwin is absolutely a buy low. He had 13.5 PPR points this week. That's perfectly fine. You'll take that every week. But obviously, I think there's even more upside there. I'm looking at him as a potential top 12 wide receiver the rest of the way. Obviously, this offense needs to figure things out. And I think I need to say obviously less. That's one of my crutch words. Everybody's got their like 3 or 4 words that they just drop in there when they don't have anything else to say. And that's one of mine. I benched Devin Duvernay for Najee Harris. I mean, look, you can't beat yourself up over that. He had 4 catches for 31 yards. The chances of him having 33 rushing yards and a touchdown are pretty slim. Rashad Bateman played in this one the last time we only saw, I think, Devin Duvernay had that rushing role in week 5. Week 5, he had the 3 carries for 24 yards. He had 0 carries in the 2 games between that. Like it sucks that you benched Devin Duvernay, but you shouldn't have been thinking about starting him anyway. So hopefully Najee Harris gets in the end zone and makes it moot, but you shouldn't beat yourself up on that. Thoughts on Kenyon Drake, Justice Hill moving forward if Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins are out? This running game doesn't have as much upside as people think. This is a situation where because Lamar Jackson is such a good runner, and he's going to have his goal line work, and because they're always going to cycle multiple running backs in, and they don't really throw to their running backs all that often. Kenyon Drake this week, did get 4 targets. That's kind of an outlier for them, and it's not something that I think you can count on. And so it's just the kind of situation where, like, I think they'll be in the Brian Robinson range, RB3 type of options moving forward if Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins. Well, J.K. Dobbins is out, but Gus Edwards if he's out. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being most concerned, how concerned are you with Chris Godwin? 2. I'm just not particularly concerned. The volume has been there. So, yeah, I think you'll take it. And please don't spam the chat. I'm just going to say that right now, just one time. We're about halfway through. Hit the like button. That's another one I'll remind you of. But don't spam the chat. I'm going through them. If I don't get to your question, I'm sorry. But you spamming the chat doesn't make me more likely to answer your question. It probably makes me less likely to answer your question. So that's what I will say. That's your warning. Have Chase 3 and 4, trade Jamar Chase for Keenan Allen. So this is a tough one, like figuring out what to do if you're the Jamar Chase manager. The problem with trading for Keenan Allen, though, is you're 3 and 4. Keenan Allen's not going to help you this week. So, like, I think in a vacuum, that's an okay trade, but you're looking at trying to trade for Keenan Allen. You're still taking the 0 for that roster spot this week, and you're hoping Keenan Allen's healthy. starting next week. So I would try to avoid that one. If you're looking to trade Jamar Chase, I think you're looking for probably a mid to high end wide receiver 2 if you can get one. That would be Keenan Allen if he was healthy. But, I would be trying to, like, if I could get Jalen Waddle for him, I would definitely do that. If I could get Tyler Lockett for him, that's one that I would do. Devontae Smith, I would do. Gabe Davis, if I could get Gabe Davis and something else useful for Jamar Chase, that's what I would do. So those are the types of players that you would be looking for. Don't drop Brandon Cooks. I think he's worth starting this week. It's risky. You don't feel great about it, but I would be viewing him as like a low-end wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 3. Hopefully he'll figure it out. Tua or Dak rest of season. I'm still going with Dak. It's going to be really interesting to see with Tua because he wasn't great in the return from the concussion in week 7. Obviously, I think I like to give most players a mulligan when they missed multiple weeks in their first game back, but he didn't play all that well. He only has one multi-touchdown game this season as a passer. He's left 2 of them with injuries, so there's extenuating circumstances involved. But yeah, it'll be really like if Tua has 257 yards and a touchdown this week, I don't know if we're going to view him as a top 12 quarterback moving forward. So I still think I would take Dak rest of season. Someone said to sit Andrews in here. He barely played and will still finish as a top 12 tight end. Yeah, I mean, what do you have? 60 points, something like that? Yeah, he probably won't be a top 12 tight end, but he might not be that far off. Should I start ETN or Tony Pollard? If Ezekiel Elliott's out, he hasn't practiced this week. We're assuming he's going to be out. Tony Pollard is a top 7 running back for me. The only running backs I have ranked ahead of him right now are Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor, Josh Jacobs, Alvin Kamara, Derrick Henry, and Christian McCaffrey. So you're starting him over to Travis Etienne. You're starting him over Joe Mixon. You're starting him over Ramondre Stevenson, Kenneth Walker, Nick Chubb, all those guys, Aaron Jones. You're probably starting Tony Pollard is the way I'm looking at it. Blockbuster trade. We just traded Brian Robinson and Deontay Johnson for Aaron Jones and TJ Hawkinson. Have Andrews, but he's banged up and has the bye coming up in week 10. Thoughts? Yeah, I think that's great. I'm like the last person on Deontay Johnson Island. I think like he's always been inefficient, but the extent to which he's been inefficient this season is just, I think, completely unsustainable. So as long as the targets are still there and he's averaging 10 plus targets per game since Kenny Pickett took over, I'm still going to view Deontay Johnson. He's still ranked as a wide receiver 2 for me this week. Hold on, my cat's yelling at me. Where'd she go? Hi, Bowie. Let's get to more questions. Who do I prefer in PPR? Terry McLaurin, Paris Campbell, or I guess that's Jamal Williams. I think I would prefer Jamal Williams, even in PPR. Obviously PPR is not his greatest format. I'm struggling with words right now. Not his best format, but I still think Jamal Williams, I'm expecting DeAndre Swift to be back this week, but to potentially have a little bit of a limited workload, maybe focus more in the end zone or red zone area, focus more on passing situations. I still think you can count on Jamal Williams for, 15 carries or 15 touches. So I still think he's an RB2. Should I drop Allen Robinson or Amon-Ra St. Brown? And do not drop Amon-Ra St. Brown at all. You should be trying to trade for Amon-Ra St. Brown. Here. She wanted to say hi. You should be trying to trade for Amon-Ra St. Brown. You should absolutely not be trying to sell him right now. You should definitely not be dropping him. He's still a top 12 wide receiver for me. I think for the rest of the season, but especially this week. Remember, he had the ankle injury in week 3. That's when he left that game. He played like 77% of the snaps or something. He had 13.5 PPR points. That broke a streak of 8 straight games going back to last season with 15 plus PPR points. He had at least 8 catches in 8 straight games before that. I think he still had 6 in the game that he left with the injury. And then he missed a game. He came back, played a very limited role because of the ankle injury, had the bye. And then last week gets knocked out because of the concussion protocol. I think it was one of those like Teddy Bridgewater situations where he didn't have a concussion, never tested for a concussion, but he, there was the signs of instability or whatever. So he was pulled out. So I think he's going to be fine this week. And I'm not concerned about Amon-Ra St. Brown at all. I'm still viewing him as an absolute must start guy. Allen Robinson, yeah, you can probably drop. I would be looking to, if you could pick up Elijah Moore, I think I would drop Allen Robinson for him because I think Elijah Moore is someone with some upside. I would even consider dropping Allen Robinson for Van Jefferson just because what we've seen from this Rams offense is they so clearly need someone who can take the top off the defense. And that's what Van Jefferson does. He had averaged 16 yards per catch last season. He's the only guy I think on their roster with the potential to make plays down the field. And that's what they really need. They need someone besides Cooper Kupp to step up and make plays. And maybe Van Jefferson gets back and it just opens everything up. Maybe it makes it so that Allen Robinson has a little more room to operate. He's really struggled with, getting separation. And if Van Jefferson can help take the top off the defense, that'll help. But I think Van Jefferson, I would rather have than Allen Robinson. Who should I start as my wide receiver 2, Chris Olave or Devontae Smith? That's a tough decision. I have Chris Olave as wide receiver 16 this week. I have Devontae Smith as wide receiver 18. It's been really awesome to see Chris Olave. He reminds me a little bit of like some Antonio Brown there in the way that, he's a little undersized, but he gets open so well. He moves so well. I'm really impressed with what we've seen from him. The ability to make plays down the field has been really impressive. So love Chris Olave even more than Devontae Smith, who is very, very good in his own right and has been able to sustain a 25% target share, even with Antonio or AJ Brown added. Here's a good question. Is there a player I would bet on to be relevant rest of season that is off most people's radars? So Van Jefferson, I think, is one if we're counting him. I don't know if Elijah Moore, we're talking about maybe lower rostered players, but not necessarily off people's radars. Those are the first two that came to mind. I would think of, let's look at some RBs. You look at someone like Zamir White, who had some hype coming into the season, but, Josh Jacobs leads the league in percentage of his team's running back touches that he has. If something happens to Josh Jacobs, Zamir White, I think, is very much worth stashing just in case. Cordero Patterson, I think, is mostly off people's radars right now. Jermichael Hasty with Jacksonville trading James Robinson. He's had, the big play a couple weeks ago, but I think he might be the backup to Travis Etienne. Dearness Johnson is another one. Kareem Hunt. There have been some trade rumors around Kareem Hunt. It's possible that he gets moved. That would make Dearness Johnson, one injury away from having a significant role. And we saw last year, he can be really good in that offense. So those are some names. CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Brandon Cooks, DJ Moore sit 2. So you're sitting Brandon Cooks, who I do like as a wide receiver 2 this week. And you're sitting DJ Moore, who I think that's an easy one. He's a wide receiver 3 at best. I think there's a chance that, he can be better moving forward, certainly better than he has been, but even like useful for fantasy, but you need to see more before you believe in it. Higbee or Dulcich. I'm really struggling with Dulcich. One, just how to value him, and then also how to pronounce his name. I keep saying Dulcich, but I'm pretty low on him relative to everyone else. I don't necessarily know if I buy him being a big part of the offense. He had 9 targets last week, but that was with Brett Rypien. We don't know, if Russell Wilson's going to throw the ball to him as much. His snap share actually went down in his second week back from the injury. So I would go with Tyler Higbee. We know what kind of role he has. It's a very valuable one. Would I ride with Justin Fields or play Goff or Garoppolo? I somehow have more faith with Fields. Yeah, I think the way Justin Fields is playing right now, he's a top 10 quarterback over the past 3 games. They're using him a lot more as a rusher than they ever did last season, which was such an indictment on Matt Nagy that he didn't use Justin Fields' obvious best skill set. But Justin Fields is also showing some life as a passer. He's making big plays down the field. That's what he's going to need to do in this low volume offense. He's going to have to hit on big plays to, make up for the lack of volume. That's what he's doing. He's got, not a good receiving core, definitely not a great one, not a good one even, but, he's got some fast, they do have speed. That's one thing this offense does have, with Dante Pettis and Equanimous St. Brown, and then obviously Darnell Mooney. guys that can make some plays down the field, and Justin Fields has looked good in doing that. So I think with the rushing ability, especially, he's a borderline top 12 quarterback. He's a quarterback 13 for me. Let's see. Start Lamar and Gus, need to boom at flex. Devontae Smith, DJ Moore, Eno Benjamin, or Wan'Dale Robinson. I think Devontae Smith is the boom play there. The only thing I would say is if James Conner suffers some sort of setback, he's been limited in practice Wednesday and Thursday, so it looks like he's on pace to play. But if he doesn't play this week, I do think Benjamin, obviously, as we saw last week, has some real boom potential in that offense as well. So that's the one thing I would say is Devontae Smith is the guy, unless James Conner's out, and then Benjamin. Rest of the season, Dak or Geno. I'm going with Dak. I have Geno, start him or pick up another quarterback. Well, it depends on who's available. Looking at my rankings, I've got Geno Smith ranked QB 11. Right above him are Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins, Tua Tagovailoa. I don't think any of those guys are available, so you're probably just starting Geno Smith. Am I more of a bass or guitar guy? Am I in a band? I am not in a band, but if anyone wants to play some really poorly played pop punk covers, hit me up. I'm a bad guitarist and a pretty bad bassist. So, hit your guy up. Romeo Doubs or Drake London, rest of season's full PPR. Honestly, this is a situation where I think Drake London's clearly the better football player. And Romeo Doubs has more of an opportunity, but I don't know if he's good enough to take advantage of the opportunity. So I think I would stick with Drake London. What I would say is if you think about it in terms of your hierarchy, right? If Drake London or Romeo Doubs, if one of them is going to be your first bench wide receiver, one, you're probably not in great shape. But two, you should probably prefer Romeo Doubs to Drake London in that instance because, if you needed to start one this week, I would rather start Romeo Doubs than Drake London. The opportunity that he's getting, the snap share that he's getting, I think you've got a better chance of getting 12 PPR points out of him this week than Drake London. But if you're talking about rest of season, whether that's the Falcons becoming more pass heavy just in general, they start, move towards Desmond Ridder and see what they have as far as him, being their potential quarterback of the future, then you're starting to look at Drake London having, I think, more upside rest of the season because he is a better player. So it just becomes a situation where, something that our former colleague Ben Gretsch writes about a lot with his Stealing Signals newsletter, which is excellent. You should subscribe to it. He talks about how situation, we're bad. We're not as good at predicting situation as we think we are. And I think the Packers wide receivers are a good example of this, where we're like, oh, it's such a good situation. Someone's got to step up. And it's like, well, no, but you still have to have talent to take advantage of situations. And we feel very confident that Drake London's a very, very talented player. The draft pedigree, what he's shown so far in limited sample size, I feel very confident he's a better player than Romeo Doubs. So if the situation changes, then he's clearly the better player. Are my weekly rankings available on the FFT CBS website? Yes, they are up on cbssports.com/fantasy/football. You might need to go to my writer page. Just click on any of my pieces. But yeah, if you go there, you'll see my QB, RB, wide receiver, and tight end rankings. I've also got top 150 flex. But you should subscribe to the Fantasy Football Today newsletter, cbssports.com/newsletter/fantasy football today, because that's where my rankings are published every week. Tuesday mornings and Sunday mornings, I publish an update. So make sure you subscribe to the FFT newsletter for that. If Brandon Cooks isn't traded, should I just drop him? He's been killing me all season. Let's see how the next week goes. This is a big opportunity for him against the Titans defense that's been very bad against wide receivers, with likely no Nico Collins this week. So if Brandon Cooks doesn't succeed this week, then yeah, I think you could probably drop him. Traded Jamal Williams and AJ Dillon for, I assume, Cordero Patterson. What do I think? I think it's fine. I don't think Cordero Patterson has, a ton of upside, but I think he can be a solid RB2 when he's healthy, which is, I think that's the upside for AJ Dillon and Jamal Williams. The only counterpoint is obviously AJ Dillon has so much more upside than anybody else in this trade. So, if something were to happen to Aaron Jones, then you would really regret trading AJ Dillon. That's the thing that would make me not want to do this trade is like, yes, Patterson, if he's healthy, I think will be more, it's more realistic that he's helping you than Jamal Williams or AJ Dillon, but you're not getting such an obvious, improvement at your running back position with Patterson that I would trade Dillon Dillon's upside. I appreciate you joining me for these Q&As after the game. Exclusive Evo. Let Russ cook, do annoying high steps in the aisle on return flight from London. It's so funny the way the like performative competitiveness thing, which is what Russell Wilson's doing. He's like, he's doing the like the Rod and Burgundy, like, 1,001. Oh, I don't know if it burns. I don't know if you heard, but I was doing 1,000 of those. That's the kind of thing he's doing here where like, he happened to tell reporters that he was doing high steps for 4 hours. It's like, yeah, he wants you to know how hard he's working. And in our sports culture, it's like sometimes we really love that. We love when a guy, the guy that we praise for their competitiveness, stays after the game taking jumpers. Kobe Bryant staying after the game on the court to shoot jumpers after a bad game. We love that from him. But Russell Wilson, we've kind of turned on him. He's corny, he's goofy, so like we don't like him anymore. And so when he does it, it's we make fun of him. Yeah, he's annoying. Like that does. Russell Wilson seems like an annoying dude. But it's if this was I don't know, Tom Brady last year, then I think the sentiment would be a little different to the like, I just want to get healthy. I'm working so hard, that kind of thing. Let's see. I think Russell Wilson also did that last year with his thumb injury, or his finger injury. There was some kind of quote where it was like, I'm only sleeping 4 hours a day and I'm rehabbing my finger otherwise. And it's like, all right, we get it. You work hard, man. You're a professional athlete. Everyone works hard. Waddle, Hawkinson, CH, Miles Sanders. Okay, so it's a trade. You're giving up Jalen Waddle, TJ Hawkinson, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and Miles Sanders. So Waddle and Sanders are valuable, but everyone else kind of fringy. For Josh Allen, Tyler Higbee, and Jacoby Myers. Full PPR, who won the trade? I think you won the trade because you got the only clear superstar difference maker player. I think Jalen Waddle is not far from that. He's a fringe top 12 wide receiver most weeks, but Josh Allen this year is such a huge edge on your competition. He's averaging, I think, 28 PPR point or 28 points per game in 6 point per passing touchdown or something. It's like he's like 9 points ahead of QB6 right now. He's like double digit points ahead of QB12 in point per game scoring. He's having a huge season and at a time when not a lot of quarterbacks are playing well. So yeah, getting Josh Allen, I think Higbee for Hawkinson is probably a lateral move, and Jacoby Myers is a fine player to have around. So I like that trade. Donovan Peoples-Jones or Marquise Goodwin. And I'm assuming just for this week, I would go Donovan Peoples-Jones. Devontae Smith or Tony Pollard at the flex. I would go with Tony Pollard for this one. Aaron Jones versus Devin Singletary. I would go with Aaron Jones. Singletary, there's a very clear trend this season. Let me see if I can get the numbers up, but it's basically when the Bills win by, I think they have 3 close games and then 3 games where they've won by like 20 plus. When they win by 20 plus, he has no more than 9 PPR points in any of his games. In the other 3 games, the close games, he's averaged 16.8 points. So yeah, that's a pretty clear trend, and the Bills are 11.5 point favorites. So, I think there's definitely some risk that we see more James Cook and Zach Moss in this game. And so that's a concern. Would I trade Khalil Herbert for James Conner? Yes, I would. I think the Cardinals offense, as we saw last week with DeAndre Hopkins back, it just makes more sense with DeAndre Hopkins there. I think there are still flaws in that offense. I think Cliff Kingsbury probably not a very good coach. Kyler Murray has his limitations as a passer, but DeAndre Hopkins is such an overwhelmingly dominant force in terms of his ability to garner a ton of targets and to efficiently turn those targets into yards that I just think this offense is going to be much better. And that's always been a good thing for the lead running back there. James Conner's inability to stay healthy is a concern, but Khalil Herbert is he's the second running back on a bad offense. And yes, they're doing the hot hand thing. And yes, he played more snaps last week, but David Montgomery still played more snaps than him. And he's still got more carries. And I think that's going to be the case moving forward. So I don't think, Khalil Herbert has plenty of upside, but James Conner has upside too. So just give me the guy in the better offense. All right, don't criticize me for wearing the same shirt. First of all, it's a great shirt. My Santurce Cangrejeros jersey, Roberto Clemente, one of the great Puerto Rican baseball teams of all time. And so I was wearing this shirt on the stream earlier. That was like 5 hours ago. Might have been more than 5 hours ago, but it was still today. All right, so don't judge me for wearing the same outfit. All right, I haven't gone anywhere. I don't leave my apartment. All right. What do I think about Kyren Williams? Lots of talk about him coming off IR soon. I think he is a 5'9", 195-pound running back who ran like a 4.65 40-yard dash and then needed surgery on a high ankle sprain before he played an NFL snap, which is to say I don't think he's going to make much of a difference. Obviously, there's an opportunity in this Los Angeles offense, but this is an offense that has created the fewest PPR points per game for running backs so far this season. So it's not even a particularly good situation. I don't know. Kyren Williams, he seems like a good pass catcher, but I think he's going to be the RB2 at best there. And that doesn't seem like a good situation right now. Let's see. Trade Foreman for DJ Moore, lost Jamar. I would do that. Yeah, I think that's fine. Deontay Foreman, I do view as an RB2 for this week, but more like an RB3 moving forward. So I don't think you're going to really miss him. I don't hate the idea of aiming really high and trying to trade Nick Chubb, who I think is a top 12 running back, but is probably, I think, overvalued right now. I think most people would probably view him as like a top 5 or 6 running back. He's not that for me. And it comes down to the pass catching role. He just doesn't have it. And maybe they trade Kareem Hunt and he catches more passes moving forward. But I think it's unlikely. I think he's still going to be the hyper efficient rusher that he's always been, but someone who needs to have touchdowns at a really high rate to be an RB1. And so if I could move, Nick Chubb for, let's say, DeAndre Swift and DeAndre Hopkins, I would consider something like that, kind of an RB2 and a high-end wide receiver. I would see if I could do that. Thoughts on Cam Akers? I think he's probably done. He's young enough that I don't want to give up on him entirely, but he needed to prove coming back from this Achilles injury that he was back to being the guy that he was pre-injury. He didn't do that last year during the playoffs. He had a full off season of recovery, and he couldn't beat out Darrell Henderson. He looked sluggish. He looked slow. He wasn't making plays. I don't know. Maybe he gets traded somewhere and finds some spark. But my assumption with Cam Akers is that there's just not much value there. We're going to do a couple more questions before we go. Obviously, make sure you hit that thumbs up little like button so my bosses will think highly of me, and subscribe to the newsletter, subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe to the podcast, everything. You probably already subscribed to the podcast, but newsletter and YouTube channel. If you don't, make sure you do. Are we dressing up on Sunday on this channel? Yeah, I will. I will be. I'll probably just be wearing the same outfit that I wore last year, which is Paddington Bear, because I love that little bear, and I bought a little coat for it. But yeah, I'll wear something. I don't know about what exactly, but yeah, I'll be dressed up. We'll see if Frank and Adam are as well. Is it trolling to start Rodgers this week or Mariota? I don't know what you mean by trolling, but I'm strongly considering starting Andy Dalton over Aaron Rodgers in one of my leagues. I'm not 100% sure if I'm going to, but I'm strongly considering that. That is one that's going to go down to the wire on Sunday morning. That's going to be one where 12:53 is when I will make my decision on Andy Dalton versus Aaron Rodgers. Right now, they are 16 and 17 in my rankings. So would not do it for Mariota. But I'm considering it with Roger, with Dalton. I'm considering it with Taylor Heineke even. Yeah. So how worried should we be about Leonard Fournette? I mean, moderately worried. This offense clearly isn't what it was last year, and he doesn't have the same role that he had last season. He's giving up passing down opportunities to Rachaad White. Rachaad White had 3 targets this week. Leonard Fournette had 3 as well. He's not getting many carries. I think at this point, if Leonard Fournette gets 12 carries in a game, that's a high end outcome. So yeah, it's not as valuable a situation as it was last season. It's concerning. How much fab for Isaiah Likely? I can't answer that question right now because we'll need to see, Mark Andrews, but I would think in a 12-team PPR league, right now, I would think 10% of your fab is probably reasonable if you really need a tight end. There's no guarantee he's going to be good, but I love the upside that he's shown, in the preseason and now. So yeah, I'm pretty happy about the potential of Isaiah Likely. If you've been doing the Cade Otton and Juwan Johnson and Irv Smith shuffle, I think Isaiah Likely belongs in that conversation. Hopefully they give him an extended opportunity after this, even if Mark Andrews is healthy. Okay, let's do 2 more questions. So thoughts on Toney to the Chiefs. Okay, so I didn't get to talk about this one yet, but I think it's pretty unlikely that Kadarius Toney is going to make much of an impact, and hopefully the police aren't coming after me for that take, but yeah, I think it's unlikely he's going to make much of an impact. I don't think that Kadarius Toney was sandbagging it in New York and was faking his injury or anything. I've seen some suggestions of that. I think he legitimately struggles to stay healthy and get healthy, and I think that's the issue for him. Everything that we've seen out of New York, especially the behind the scenes stuff, is that they really like his talent. They just don't. I don't know if they love his work ethic. I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but just his inability to get on the field. I think Jordan Renan, I think is his name, from ESPN, the Giants reporter. The way he put it was they don't have a problem with him when he's in the building. They don't trust him to put in the work on his own, was the way he put it. And I think that's an interesting thing to consider. Kadarius Toney's a very talented player, but we got the reports that the Giants were looking to trade him at the draft. Obviously, they weren't happy with his inability to stay healthy. And it's a concern. So I think he's a talented player, and maybe he'll figure it out in Kansas City. But wide receivers changing teams midseason don't tend to do all that well. This is a guy who's barely played this season, hasn't done anything with the opportunities that he's had. So we're really chasing one half of football against the Cowboys last year. Plus, first round draft capital is not nothing. But I think it's pretty unlikely Kadarius Toney is going to turn into anything. And if people are excited and you have him on your bench, I think this is a perfect opportunity to try to trade him. All right. Well, that's going to do it for the Thursday night post-game Q&A. Thanks so much for joining me. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe for more opportunities to chat with us. We'll be back on Sunday morning with more of your questions. Adam Azer and Frank Stanfield and I will be here Sunday morning at 11:30, right up through kickoff. We will have more FFT stuff tomorrow morning, more reactions from Thursday night, more start-sit stuff. Subscribe to the Fantasy Football Today newsletter, all that stuff. We love you guys. Bye.